I didn't cut. All right. I thought that was going to. All right. Anyway, I guess that sort of cut it off. This is going to be in two sections, this class. Yud Aleph. Alpiz, according to this, now we can explain the words of Yaakov to Paro when he came to Egypt. What did Yaakov say to Paro when he came to Egypt? He said, "Vayomer Yaakov el Paro." Yaakov said to Paro, "B'mana shalom." Paro said, "How old are you?" So Yaakov answered him back. What did he answer him back? He said, Yemei Shnei Megorei, the days of my journey in the world, Shloshim u'me'ah shana, 130 years. Me'at v'ra'im hayu, they were few and terrible. Yemei Shnei Chaya, the days of my life. V'lo isigu et Yemei Shnei Chaya avosai, and they did not reach the life of my fathers in the days of their journey in their life. So Abraham lived 175 years old, and Yitzchak lived 180 years, and Yaakov at this time was only 130. So he said, I'm only 130 years, and my life has been bad and few. What did he have to throw that in for? What's he complaining about? Yaakov, Paro said, listen, you're the father of Yosef. Yosef saved the whole world. I'm really so grateful. How old are you? So he said, 130. No, couldn't live. Said, I lived 130 years, and my years were terrible and short, not like the years of my fathers. What did he have to throw in these complaints for? Why? When Paro heard from Yaakov the number of his life, he knew that he knew how many years he lived, 130. Yaakov didn't have to say, I have a few years, and that they were bad. Number two, Yaakov, the main thing is Yaakov, what did he say? His life was 130 years. Are few? What do you mean few? When God brought the flood, so he said the life of people is going to be 120 years. And Yaakov was already 130. Hem lo rak mutarim elagam hepech metziut. Not only to say that they're few is an extra, he didn't have to say it, but it's the opposite of the fact. The fact is he was 10 years more than the completion of life of people. Right after the flood, he said, God said, people will live 120 years. What is Jacob saying? That my years are few, and that in fact, they weren't few at all. Not only was it unnecessary to say they were few, it's wrong. Shailazu, this also is even stronger, according to what it says in the Meforshim, the different commentaries, that Paro, he asked Yaakov, how old are you? Why? Because Shezorku bo Seva. All of a sudden, Yaakov looked old. And he looked like he was very old. And Paro was amazed on the age. He looked so old. Because the majority of people in Egypt, they didn't live so long. People's lives started to get short. So people didn't even live 120 years old. And he looked at Yaakov and he said, wow, you really look old. How old are you? According to this, that was the question of Paro to Yaakov. Because really, you go up to a person and say, hello, my name is Joe. How old are you? You don't do a thing like that. Why did he ask Yaakov, how old are you? Because he was amazed. You look really, really old. He was amazed. How old are you? According to this, it's even a bigger question. Why did he say, he said that my years are 130 and that they are few? This is exactly the opposite of what it was. What Paro saw that he was very old, and he's saying, I'm not old. I have only a few years. That people usually did not live even to 120. And here Yaakov looked old, and in fact, he was 130, older than almost everybody in the world. That's why Paro was amazed at his age of Yaakov. So what is Yaakov saying? I only have a few years. I'm not. When Yaakov said, "Me'at, my years are few," maybe you can say no, they were few compared to Abraham and Yitzchak. Below Isigu, that he did not yet achieve the days of his forefathers, that they were much more. Abraham was 175, Yitzchak was 180. Like it says, when Paro was amazed at the longevity of Yaakov, as Yaakov said, that my life up to now is very few compared to what my parents. Oh, that makes a little bit of sense. My parents lived, he says, you think I'm old? My father lived 180. My grandfather lived 175. That when he was old was because his life, he had trouble. Soros, the reason I look old is because I had so much trouble in life. I was worried about Yosef. That sort of makes sense. But what Rashi says, lo hisigu betova, he said that I didn't have good life. Shemityachesed l'rayim. That's Rashi doesn't even talk about what Yaakov said, that they were few. Yaakov said, my life is few and bad. What does it mean is bad? That the benefit that he got in life was the good things up to now were nothing like what Abraham and Isaac got. This means that the 130 years that Yaakov lived, not only in relation to what Abraham and Isaac lived, but 130 years themselves, not relative to anything else, they were few. Why say they're few? So now we can understand why. We can say the explanation is very simple, that the days of Yaakov's life were few, even though they were 130 years old, they were few in quality. What does it mean, quality? Well, even though that they were physically, quantity, there was a lot of days. He lived a long time, 130. But nevertheless, in quality, they were very, very few. They were very few. Liotam yomim chaserim, because there were days that were empty. The opposite of what Abraham had, that he was filled with days. His days were full. That means they were filled. Why? Because Achisron Betova, by Yaakov, the days were missing something good. They're not filled with good. It's true they were days, but they weren't filled with anything good. They were empty days, meaningless days. What does that mean? Even more, not only were they meaningless, they weren't filled with good, they were bad. This will be completed by Yechi Yaakov Be'eretz Mitzrayim Shvayas Reishana. The last 17 years that he lived, he died when he was 147. Ke'ilu Yemei Tova. This is the last 17 years that he lived. Those were good years. Yesh Lomar, we can say that by means of this, he also achieved the life of his fathers. When in his 147 years, he reached to the ultimate completion. He made up all the 130 empty years in the last 17 years of his life, including even the 180 years that Yitzchak lived. How? The meaning is like this. Right. The meaning is like this. The reason that his 130 days were not complete like Abraham, because since that the whole thing of Yaakov was Geula, the whole thing of Yaakov was the future redemption and gathering all the Jewish people. Something like what it was with Yosef. When Yosef was born, then he was already ready that he left the house of Lavan, and that was after Yosef was born. Rachel gave birth to Yosef. He left the house of Lavan, and he was ready to sit in peace and gather all the Jewish people together. This was like, he was ready for the redemption. But all of a sudden he realized it wasn't going to happen. Yosef was sold into captivity. He thought that his sons would have peace between them, there would be love, there would be the redemption. All of a sudden there was this terrible thing that happened, and Yosef was sold into captivity. This is what Yaakov let know to Paro. That Yaakov did not, lo yita, he didn't make a mistake to think that Yaakov and his sons, Yistapku, shouldn't make a mistake and think that Yaakov and his sons will be satisfied with the fact that now they're living in Egypt and they have no more troubles. They have all the food they want. Nobody's threatening them. There's no difficulties. And he's giving them the best place in the land of Egypt. Don't think that they're going to be satisfied. Why? Because the whole essence of what Yaakov's life was geula, total redemption. Therefore, Gam Yeshivatam b'Mitzrayim, all the time that they were in Egypt, all the time were there, even in these 17 years, because by means of the refining Egypt, by means of Yaakov lived there 17 years, that would be the redemption would come. It says then, this is Poked, I will, the guy, Yosef promised, I will bring you all up from Egypt. Then it'll be a higher way, but then there'll be completion. But until then, as Yiyeh Vayechi Yaakov lo rak kof mem zayin shana, not what kof pei shana, not only 180 years old, but eternal life. What's the Rebbe trying to say here? A person that has a goal, if he hasn't really achieved that goal, it's like he wasn't really alive. That's why a person sets false goals for himself. Therefore, he's always going to be frustrated. Why? Because you achieve a false goal. Let's say he wants fame. He achieves fame and he realizes that fame is not really a true goal. It was a nice thing, but it wasn't really real. Yaakov had a true goal. He wants to reveal the creator and the creation. He wants to show what Jews really are, that they're a holy people, and that the whole world is being created by a holy God, and that the world is really good. That's called the Geula. Until this happens, Yaakov feels frustrated. His life is not really real because he has a true goal. So therefore, Paro asked him, how old are you? He said, 130 years, but those 130 years, I was only waiting for the redemption. Therefore, the days that I had are short. They were short. They were like empty. And they were also bad because the Geula didn't come. The last 17 years of his life when he was living in Egypt, that was already refining the world, getting the world ready for the Geula. That's already being alive. Then they weren't bad. But the first 130 years said, I was hoping for redemption. And there was not even moving in that direction. Now that we're in Egypt and we're going to start purifying the world, that's true redemption. But don't think that we're satisfied with the good that you're giving us in Egypt. We're in Egypt only to do the job, or to do the job of bringing the Geula. Okay, that is today's. We'll continue tomorrow, God willing. So over, here we go.